Well, good morning, everyone. How are we on this beautiful morning? Let's less, I want to say moist. It's much better now than it was this morning. But at any rate, I'm John Mann, Director of Education for Lakeside, and this year we are celebrating the cultural and geographic regions in the United States. And how do I want to word this? No exploration of culture and region is complete without a look at dance. And we're fortunate that Annika Schief is here today. And her talk today, The Secret Power of the Cakewalk, explores the dances created during the era of slavery in America, including the ring shout and the cakewalk. Annika is a graduate of the Juilliard School and the University of Arts and Bennington College, where she earned her master's. She toured with the Pelobus Dance Theater and has appeared on America's Got Talent, Sesame Street, and was a member of the Groundworks Dance Theater. And she is currently on the faculty of Texas Christian University. I would ask you please mute your cell phone ringers if you haven't already, and help me in welcoming Annika Schief.
Yay. All right, can you all hear me okay? Amazing, awesome. So my name's Annika Schief. I first just want to say thank you for spending your morning with me. It's awesome to see all of you here, and thank you to John for bringing me out. I'm a dancer through and through. I primarily love to speak through my body, but today I'll be using my voice, so I will just call into the space that I'm a little bit nervous, so just so you know that. Maybe that levels the playing field just a little bit. So we're going to be talking about the cakewalk. We're going to be talking about dance. I love dance. Sometimes I get really excited. If I get too excited, just be like, yo, calm it down. You're getting a little bit crazy. I'm not going to make you dance, so you don't have to worry about that. But take care of yourselves. Do whatever you need to do. If you need to get up, if you need to stretch your legs, if you need to take a big stretch, if you need to leave the room because you are not interested, do what you need to do to make yourselves happy this morning. And then at the end I'll just say a bunch of things, and then at the end we can open it up and have a conversation. And there may be a few times inside of the lecture where I am reaching out to all of you for a little bit of participation, but again, nothing too crazy. So to start with, something that I'm always trying to make a very conscious effort about in my own life is how I'm holding space for people, especially when I'm the person at the front of the room who has the power. And in this instance, language is incredibly important, especially when we're talking about things like racial dynamics between white and black people. I'm gonna be very, very intentional with my word choice, how I'm speaking, and doing that very purposefully. So in this presentation, I'm not gonna romanticize anything. I'm gonna take ideas from Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 Project in terms of how I refer to, I'm not gonna say plantations, because I think that is a romantic idea of what was happening at that time in this country. I'm gonna refer to those as labor camps. I'm not gonna talk about the Middle Passage as something that, again, is a romanticized idea. That was a forced migration of people from Africa to the United States. I'm never gonna say slaves. I'm gonna say enslaved people, so that I am highlighting their humanity at the forefront of what that experience was. Unless I'm quoting somebody else, I'm gonna be capitalizing black and not white. Again, that is just a very small way that I can show a tiny form of reparations. And for me, language is very important. It holds a lot of power. It's how we frame how we want to be viewed and how we think about our views. And so just so that you know, that's how I'm putting myself forward. All right, that's enough about that. All right, secret power of the cakewalk. So I know a lot about dance, that's why I'm here, and I'm assuming that most people in this room are not dancers. Raise your hand if you identify as a dancer. Okay, amazing, yay. Well, from the majority of the people in this space, you're probably wondering, well, how can dance possibly be a form of resistance? I don't understand what that means. Fred Moten says, in fact, the subversive intellectual enjoys the ride and wants it to be faster and wilder. She does not want a room of his or her own. She wants to be in the world with others, and making the world anew. This is from Fred Moten's The Undercommons. And I think the answer to how can dance be a form of resistance is that there have always been things to resist against for as long as people have been around, and people have always used dance as a way to express themselves and to communicate and to fight, especially when language was maybe not an option. And each community of people has done that in unique and innovative ways. So, dance is subversive. It's not straightforward, it's not direct, it's subversive. It's a way to reclaim some of your own power when your power is being taken from you, to feel that you have agency and choice. Dance is intellectual. Dancers are incredibly smart. The way that they move through space, the way that they coordinate their bodies. I think oftentimes there's a stereotype with, oh, well, dancers aren't really that smart. They just get up there and do those things. Well, if you get up there and try to do those things, you'll realize how difficult they are. And so being able to move your body to communicate is a highly intellectual act. And dance is a ride. Dance makes you feel alive. Dance brings you closer to your spirituality, your feeling of maybe why you exist in this world. Like, you can answer questions through your physical body that you can't always find answers to inside of your intellectual mind. And so with these three things combined, you can really feel like through dance, I can resist, I can find my power. Okay, when captive Africans were brought to North America, beginning in the 1600s, they came without possessions, but not without culture. In their memories, their customs, and their worldview, they carried their cultural arts. These would enrich the New World as Africans, Europeans, and Native Americans together created a new way of life. African dance, rooted in a distinctive musical tradition, was one of the most important of the cultural arts carried across the Middle Passage. So this is from Barbara Glass. I think the most important part of this whole passage is African dance, rooted in a distinctive musical tradition, was one of the most important of the cultural arts brought to North America. You see it instilled in so many different parts of African American culture today that you almost can't watch any form of dance without tracing it back to what happened in the past. Okay, so forced migration. We know that enslaved people were transported primarily from the west coast of Africa to America as early as the 15th century. The voyage, depending on weather and depending on routes, took a various amount of time. It could take anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 months. Numbers of people brought over are a little bit vague, but there's an estimated 12 million enslaved people taken captive in the transatlantic slave routes, and an estimated 2.4 million who perished. And this image that you're looking at is like a bird's eye view of the ship. And these are the way that the people were brought over inside of the hull and on the deck, laying sideways, very, very, very close together. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because there was a phenomenon that was happening on these ships, which was called the dancing of the slaves, where the people manning the ship would bring the enslaved people up onto the deck and force them to dance. They forced them to sing, they forced them to dance, and this sort of, starting in the roots and then permeating into Southern culture, became a staple of this stereotype idea that these people were joyful and happy and would sing and dance all the time, which was a facade for what was actually happening inside of their lives. So this practice of dancing of the slaves started because Europeans were associating dance with exercise and physical well-being, and knowing that they would get a better price at the auction for enslaved people who were physically fit. There were multiple accounts of this happening across different ships' logs. The captains made remarks about the deck of the ship being the stage, and the enslaved were the entertainment. They were forced to dance and play instruments under the threat of the whip while wearing their shackles. One ship surgeon even wrote that Africans were, quote, excoriated by the violent exercise, and they had swelling in their legs that was extremely painful, end quote. Quote, in order to gain public approval while psychologically validating their role within the Atlantic slave trade, white slavers continually attempted to present their captives as happy, end quote. So there was also this dual idea happening of, one, we're gonna make people dance so that there appears to be joy on the ship, and also so that these people are getting exercise and staying fit, but also a validation for the people who were enslaving these captives to feel like, oh, they're fine, and what I'm doing is moral and just. If these people are happy, they're okay, that's gonna make them feel better about what it is that they're doing. Quote, the coerced physical assertion of the captives represented more than the slavers' desire to preserve the human cargo. It also positioned Africans as entertainers while simultaneously situating whites as the audience, end quote. That's by Katrina Thompson. This practice began the onslaught of racial stereotyping that is still seen at times in American culture, especially in performance. All right. So like I said before, the term labor camps is coming from Nicole Hannah Jones, and if you haven't read the 1619 Project, I highly recommend it. Slaves are generally expected to sing as well as to work, from Frederick Douglass. And forcing enslaved people to dance and sing for white slavers against their will became a way for slavers to assert their power, their status, as well as their whiteness. However, inside of this forced singing and dancing, there were ways in which resistance could appear. The enslaved people had a kind of a code where they sang songs that sounded harmless to a white person or somebody who was outside of that community, and the songs were full of metaphors about freedom and never giving up the fight. All right, so people were brought from all over Africa to the United States, and when they arrived here, they're from all different communities. Obviously, they're not able to speak the same languages or to communicate with their words, and so they found other ways to do that. Sundays were the only day that enslaved people had for themselves, and on Sundays, they danced and they sang for themselves. Dance slowly became a site of cultural resistance for enslaved people because it was not easily analyzed by the enslavers. The ways in which they were able to be subversive through the dancing and the things that they said and the things that they sang while they were dancing, it wasn't always clear to the enslavers to come out and say, well, this is very clearly a resistance dance and you're gonna make an uprising and this is a problem. They were able for it to become, a site of cultural resistance that was really for themselves. And then through that, dance becomes a language for them. It becomes intertwined with this sense of this new African-American identity. It's not a separate thing. It's a way for them to feel connected, especially when they can't use their words to do that, and to be fueling their power inside of the community that they're building together. How are we doing up to here? Okay, great. So I'm gonna walk you through just what are some of the most apparent characteristics of African dance. So the knees and the body are gonna be bent towards the earth. So the knees are gonna be, I'm gonna have to show you a little bit because that's what I do. So you bend your knees and you bring your body forward in reverence to the earth. The earth is super important, and so they want to always be giving reverence and gratitude to the land. that nourishes them. All of the body parts are moving. Your legs are moving, your feet are moving, your head is moving, your rib is moving. They're all going in different directions at different times. I'm also wearing a dress, so I can't be, too wild. Movements are asymmetrical, meaning if something is happening on this side of my body up in this plane, something is going to be happening on a different one on the other side. So I'm not going to be moving with my body parts totally symmetrical. The movement in the pelvis and the spine are some of the most important characteristics. These are the parts of the body that symbolize fertility of people and of the land, and so you see a lot of rippling in the pelvis in all directions and also in your spine. Movement is improvisational, so a lot of it is based off of a certain genre, or within a particular dance there might be certain moves that people are drawn to, but a lot of it is just being made up while it's happening. So to do that, you have to be really creative. You have to be open to taking what's coming into you and then putting it out through your bones. Polyrhythms. Many, many rhythms are happening at the same time. So you maybe have one rhythm in your head and a different one in your ribs and a third one in your feet. I can't do it, but many rhythms inside of the body coexisting at the same time. It's super hard to do. Drums are the leading instrument. There's a lot of pantomime, so a lot of imitation of the world all around them, whether this is coming out in animal dancing or mimicking of waves or trees, things like that. And then the use of objects. So lots of dances have really elaborate masks that were worn, beautiful costumes. The staff is something that was easily brought over to the Americas, little cloths, feathers, etc., etc. Generally, in these dances, the genders are going to be separated. So there's going to be dances for the males, there's going to be dances for the females, or if they're at the same time, they're happening in separate circles that are nearby each other. No touching. We don't touch each other in these dances. You don't have to. You're doing your own thing. You're doing it in community and you're doing it with people, but we're not going to be physically connected. Clothing is going to be loose. Why do you think it's going to be loose? If there is any clothing. There might not even be clothing. So you can move. Exactly. You have to be able to do all of these things. You can't be wearing a corset. Position of the feet. Parallel. Your feet are straight forward for the most part. The way that these dances are passed on through generation is by showing and repeating and talking somebody through it. So it's an oral tradition. Purpose of them is usually sacred. There's usually some very clear reason why the dance is happening, and there were lots of dances, and they all had lots of different reasons to exist. The performance is outside, your feet are bare, you're touching the ground, you're connected to the earth. And they're communal, and they're highly participatory. So it's very rare to be like, I don't like dancing, I'm good, I'm not gonna do it, I don't really want to. It's like, no, you're gonna do it, because we all have to do it, and this is what we do. Okay, so this is a painting that was created sometime around 1795 by a man named John Rose. He had a labor camp in Beaufort County, South Carolina. And this is a pretty unique painting for this time, and it's also pretty famous. Maybe you've seen it before. And it's unique because it's trying to capture the essence of what life was like at some times for enslaved people. So when you look at this and you think about all the things that I just said about African dance characteristics, what pops out to you? What do you notice? Exactly. You see people that are moving and the body is bent forward towards the earth. What else do you see? The staff. Staff and the bare feet. Excellent, gold stars. Lots of color. Now, they didn't have access maybe to make the kind of costuming that they wanted to make, but they're wearing beautiful clothes and lots of color. What else do you notice? Drums? Yeah, yeah. There's definitely drumming happening in the corner. What's next to the drums? The banjo. Did you know that the banjo is an African instrument? Now you do. Awesome. There's one more thing that the people on the left, I always get confused with left and right. You know why? Because when you teach dance, you have to say everything backwards. So if I'm facing you and I say, move your left arm, I'm moving my right, and then I always get confused which one is which. So, okay, so what are these women on the left holding? Some scarves, some cloths, yeah. And you'll see that comes back to us when I'm talking about the buzzard lope. So European religion affected dances of the enslaved people, and I will talk about that more as we move into the ring shout. And Barbara Glass says, whites and blacks watched and participated in each other's dances, and both were changed because of that. So this is just a really interesting and very clear description visually of the movements, the bare feet, the props, the clothing, how it's communal, how there would be music, what might be happening on a labor camp. Okay, let's talk about the ring shout. This is very cool. The ring shout is the oldest continuously practiced African-derived dance in the United States, and it is still performed in the Georgia Sea Islands today. Most likely an amalgamation of several African circle dances, it is the oldest African-American religious dance. That's from Barbara Glass. So basically what Barbara Glass is trying to say is that the ring shout is ancient. People have been dancing in circles since humans were on this earth. This is a dance that is religious and sacred, and it survived the forced migration of these people. It can be traced back to Ghana, the Ivory Coast, Togo, Burkina Faso, Benin, Nigeria. And this West African dance and culture is being infused and informed into this new African American culture, which is being created in real time at this point in history. So the shout is also really resilient, and the fact that it's a dance that is still being performed today, it's got to have something going on that makes it easy to grasp onto and for people to keep going. So it is strongly African, and it provided a nurturing experience for enslaved and free black people. So the shout was necessary, and I'll talk about more why. But people, enslaved people in particular, really felt that this was a way for them to reclaim their power, find a sense of strength inside of a world that was extremely oppressive, and therefore this dance becomes necessary for their existence. It was also highly adaptable as a folk tradition through slavery and later the African-American Christian experience. And I'll talk about that too, the way that Christianity sort of informs the shout and the shout informs Christianity. That's, to me, super interesting. And it is really resilient African music and dance traits. So these things are flexible, they're changing over time, they're tangible, they're necessary. And I think for me, that's why dances like this, not just the shout, but any dance that has a really strong purpose it's going to last through time. People aren't just it's not gonna be like the dab or the twist. It's gonna fade out. It's really important. Okay. So how do you know that you're looking at a shout? If you're in a place where a shout is happening, how can you walk in and say, oh, I know what this is the ring shout? It's going to move in a counterclockwise circle. It is a religious ritual, and it's community-based. The movements are quite straightforward. You're gonna see people clapping. You're gonna see the stance of the body forward. You're gonna see shuffling of the feet, and they're gonna keep the feet on the floor. This is really interesting, well, to me. I mean, everything about dance is interesting to me, but hopefully it's interesting to you. So at this time, the church was defining dance as sinful. You cannot dance. Oh, that's horrible. Why would you ever do that? And then inside of that, the definition of what dance is also very specific. It's a crossing of the feet. So if you do this, I'm dancing. But if I do this, I'm not dancing. Definitely not dancing. So that is how they got around this. They said, fine, you don't want us to dance? That's not a problem. We just won't cross our feet. And they were very, very, very diligent about keeping the feet on the floor and sliding them and making sure that they didn't cross them at all. Inside of the shout, there's usually somebody who's sitting in a chair towards a very visible part of the circle, and they have a staff, and they're keeping the time, and they're also responsible for, there's a lot of call and response inside of a shout. They'll call something out, the community will respond, and it'll keep going back and forth like this. And the goal is, like at the end of it, that you've reached a sort of mass hypnosis, or at least that some people inside of it the spirit has come into them, and maybe they've passed out, and they're attended to, and then they come back to, and they've had a vision, or something has been enlightened in them, and so something has been gained from this very, very arduous experience of dancing. Maybe that happens for everybody, maybe it doesn't. You do the shout all night long, you're very, very exhausted, but it's a healing ritual for these people. As participants move in a counterclockwise circle, they sing improvised hymns that are called shouts. And while they move, they often pantomime the lyrics of the song. Later, when Christianity becomes more involved, they actually start to incorporate hymns into some of them, or they adapt the hymns and sort of make them their own. So in the hymn called Adam and Eve, when the lyrics say, picking up leaves, the dancers literally go bend down to the ground and pantomime picking up leaves. And similarly, in a hymn called Rock Daniel, some of the dancers rock their bodies as they move their feet. Because the songs are loosely narrative, they often told stories of centuries of oppression or were used to worship God. This also served as a great historical, cultural, oral history record. Okay, checking in, how you doing? Okay, awesome. Okay, so now we start to get into how is Christianity affecting the shout, and how is the shout affecting Christianity? So in the 16 and 1700s, enslaved people practiced their own African religions. And during this time, slave owners were reluctant to try to convert the enslaved people to Christianity for several reasons. One, they thought that Christianity might bring freedom automatically to these people. And two, they feared that any kind of organized activity among the enslaved for fear of them planning insurrections. Any type of gathering had to be evaluated by slave owners because they were completely outnumbered, especially in the South. During this time, the ways that they worshiped established ritual dance as an integral part of African American culture. So as late as the 1800s, many enslaved people were left to practice their own religions and rituals as they pleased. Frederick Douglass, Master Hugh Auld said, quote, "If he learns to read the Bible, it will forever unfit him to be a slave. He should know nothing but the will of his master and learn to obey it," end quote. Many slave owners had thought that as long as the enslaved people worked all day, they could do as they pleased in the night. And this led to centuries of African people passing down their cultural traditions to one another and therefore establishing ritual dance as a central part of African American culture. In the 1800s, more enslaved people were converted to Christianity, and the shout absorbed some of these Bible narratives like I was talking about before. People were converting to Christianity and creating a way of worshiping that combined their own African religious rituals and these Christian stories and beliefs. And this starts to come out in the ways that like in the songs that they're singing in the shout, and even some of these movements that are coming through in the hymns. 1903, W.E.B. Du Bois comments, "The religion of the poor whites is a plain copy of Negro thought and methods." For me, this is super interesting. This is maybe, or maybe it happened even before this, but this is maybe one of the first times we see a very clear white appropriation of black culture. So as W.E.B. Du Bois points out in The Souls of Black Folk, poor white people were appropriating the actions, behaviors, and religious practices displayed in the shout, like the actual movements start coming up in the way that these white people were practicing their own Christianity inside of, this is what these two pictures are. So the top picture is a picture of a shout happening, and right below it is a white camp meeting, and you see the preacher, and he's leading all of these women, and the women are falling out, and they're losing their bonnets, and they're shouting, and they're calling and responding, and they're mimicking the actions that they're seeing in the shout. Great. So there's not a lot, obviously there's not a lot of film, but there was a very great group called Bessie Jones and the Georgia Sea Island Singers, and they, for many, many years, kept the shout alive, and they were on tour, and you were able to see sort of like a performative version of a shout, so I'm gonna play that for you now, just so you can get an idea of what it would have looked like, or one version might have looked like. Okay, so you saw the person with the staff keeping the time, you saw them keeping their feet on the ground, they're moving in a counterclockwise position. This is how you know this is a shout. Okay, I have another video for you. We're just gonna watch it and enjoy.
The majority of Africans who arrived on American shores went to their graves believing in, if not practicing, some form of African religion. But resistance to the Christian message began to soften as more black people were born on American soil. In the 1750s, white Baptist and Methodist preachers traveled through the South and parts of New England. They taught Christian brotherhood and spiritual equality and delivered their sermons in a fiery evangelical style that appealed to poor whites and enslaved black people.
What evangelical religion did was give blacks the right to affirm their bodies, because it said that I exist. The society said you're not even fully human. But in evangelical Christianity, not only am I human, I can shout, I can feel, my body mattered, my hands mattered, my ideas mattered. I felt it. It gave them a religion of feeling. It gave them a religion of physical identification that I think made it more meaningful. It wasn't just doctrine, creeds that you believed in. It was what you felt.
The combination of message and presentation was unlike anything that had come before. Thousands flocked to hear the gospel in what became known as the Great Awakening. For black people in North America, the awakening opened a door through which they first took Jesus as their own, and through which they let him take them. Over generations, it would become a powerful and lasting bond.
There was something in the message of Christianity. There was something in the religion of the oppressors that they saw that was deeper than even the oppressor's presentation of that. I mean, for example, the slaves had this saying that there must be another Bible within that Bible.
Black people did not assume the Christianity of their oppressors. The Christianity that black people assumed was a Christianity that they created out of the interaction with the Christianity that was presented to them, and the Christianity that they re-evaluated and reconfigured to fit their needs.
Charleston, South Carolina. In 1815, the enslaved black population outnumbered the free white population by more than 2 to 1. On Sunday mornings, black people listened quietly to pro-slavery sermons in the sanctuaries of the city's white churches. On the surface, the Africans seemed to accept these preachments without open confrontation. But on weeknights and Sunday evenings, it was a different story. During slavery, secret meetings served as a place where black women and men could worship God in the way that they saw fit. Their songs recalled stories from the Bible, triumphs of the weak over the mighty. Ceremonially, they traveled through time, casting themselves as God's chosen people of centuries past. At the heart of this experience was the ring shout, the sacred ritual in which worshipers shift their feet and move their bodies in a circle to symbolize the connection between past, present, and future. Over time, the meeting places came to be known as praise houses. The praise house family functioned as the secret religious societies had in Africa. Members were initiated in after months of reporting their dreams and going into the woods at night to seek God. It was a bond that was as strong as the bonds of one's birth family.
These folk worked from sunup to sundown and went to the prayer house and would stay way up until the night hours. It had to be valuable, not just as a time of release, but as a time of community, as a time of being with people who know your everyday burdens and struggles and woes, as a time of being with folk who know what it means to know things ought not be as they are. But this is what we got to deal with, and things are going to change, but we just have to go through this.
Okay. Hard shift. In the dark years of American slavery and postbellum economic oppression, the shout offered nurturing and spiritual fulfillment to a people whose lives were otherwise shadowed by pain and deprivation. Lawrence McKiver captured some of this feeling when he said, "If they set that song right and I get my blood sort of warm, I can shout. It make you feel good, you get something out of it." The survival of the shout was no accident, but happened because of the personal and spiritual value of the experience. Barbara Glass. Okay. I have way less information about the second dance I'm talking to you about today, which is the buzzard lope, which is primarily because it's not really performed anymore. And so it's just not as resilient and hasn't been around quite as prevalent. It is an ancient dance. It is African. It started as an imitation of a buzzard who's trying to find and eat carrion. The performer does a lot of pantomime, specifically very intentionally unrealistic bird-like movements. And one of the most prominent things about the buzzard lope is this white handkerchief, which is placed into the center of whoever is dancing. And when that first started, that was a representation of a carrion, which you then dance around on top of, jumping over. And later renditions had a person lie prone on their back in place of the white handkerchief as they came to America and started having this experience of slavery. They were often denied proper burial rites for people who passed away, and so the buzzard lope became a way that they could transform this dance ritual and use it sort of as a burial ritual for people who needed to be respected and placed into the ground with some reverence. And the person that you see here, his name is John Davis. He was the most prevalent buzzard lope dancer, and when he passed away, the buzzard lope also kind of went with him, and that's part of why it wasn't, it's not performed as much. Similar bird dances can be seen in the Mandinka Lenjengo dance and among the Ashanti Fanti peoples of the Gold Coast. And like I was explaining, this dance transformed into a dance representing the experience of being enslaved, changing it from a dance about something they were seeing in nature instead. So I have another video, it's short, to give you an example of what the buzzard lope would look like. Get the idea. Yeah, so the buzzard lope and the ring shout are both really great examples of how dance can be used as resistance. It's you're having things that are taken away from you, well, forget it. I'm gonna use dance and I'm gonna bring it back to myself in the ways that I need to. Everybody good? Okay, great. We're gonna shift now to some of the European American dances that were happening at the same time. So characteristics of these dances. These dances are derived from court dances of the nobility. Therefore, dancing is extremely elitist. You have to get the right clothes so that you can make sure everybody knows your social status. You need to have lessons because you can't just walk up in there and pretend like you know how to do a quadrille. Are you kidding? You're gonna have to study those dances. Which means you're gonna have to pay for those lessons. Oh, and by the way, we're gonna need to probably hire a full orchestra to do our dances, so we're gonna have to pay all those people too. So this kind of dancing is very elitist. These dances, okay, let me get back on I'm coming up here. Body is vertical. It's held very upright in a reverence to heaven, and the center of weight is very high. So we're not down into the earth anymore. We're like, I'm up here and I'm floating. This is a couple dance. Now we're gonna mix our genders. The males are gonna dance with the females because why? Because I'm going to the ball to look for my husband. That's what I'm doing, unless it's already been arranged for me, and then, well, tough luck. We're gonna touch. It's gonna be very proper, but I'm gonna lightly touch your back, maybe just with my thumb because I don't want to get too crazy, and we're going to move around the space together like so. And most of these dances are done in very intricate geometric patterns. So we have circle dances, we have line dances, we have dances that make arrows on the floor. And some of these are even written down very detailed inside of manuals by the people who created them, and then you have to study the patterns, and again, lots of education in order to do this. Symmetrical. The body is going to be very symmetrical. Maybe this is a little asymmetrical, but mostly symmetrical. Clothing is going to be tight. It's going to be restrictive. You're going to probably have a very big wig on your head, maybe, depending on how fancy your ball is. Your feet are going to be, I don't know if you can see my feet, they're going to be slightly rotated open. This is like the beginnings of ballet. Feet are going to be slightly pointed. There's only one rhythm. If we're doing a waltz, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. You don't have to have 6 rhythms going at one time, just one. How these are passed down, a lot of them can be written down. There's dance notation, but also they can just be shared orally. Somebody can just teach you by telling you and showing you how to do them. These are secular dances. They're performed usually in grand ballrooms. And who can participate is based on your social hierarchy, and it's very selective for the most part. You have to be invited, you have to be told where is the ball, you gotta have all of the right things in order to roll up and make this happen. Okay, this video is not the best example, but it gives you a little bit of an idea. Because there's no sound also. So you see the couple dance, you see that they're touching, you see that they're wearing fancy clothes. The only thing I would say is that they're a little bit wild. They get a little bit rowdy. But they're having a good time, and it's very clear that they're not improvising, they're not making it up as they go along. They've probably practiced this, maybe not with each other, but definitely with their teachers and other people. All right. Good? You see what? It's crazy. They're going way too crazy. Okay, so by the 1700s, European American dances are starting to fall into two major categories. You have your fancy dances and you have your country dances. So now we start to deviate just a little bit from some of these elitist ideas. Okay, so but if you want to do a fancy dance, it is still elitist and exclusive. It is performative, it is fancy, it's got the European roots, you need the lessons to learn them. Only specific people are going to interact or be invited. Dances that fall into this category are the quadrille, the cotillion, the waltz, the minuet, blah, blah, blah. Country dances, these are more simple to learn and they're typically danced by country folk. They're progressive in the sense that everybody can do them. So how many of you have ever gone line dancing? Okay, so you've done a country dance, and it's one of those things where you can go up, you can walk into the barn and be like, I'm watching, I got it, 2, 3, 4, da, 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 I got it, right? Like you feel like after you've watched it 8 times, you could probably jump in. That's a country dance. Reels and jigs are country dances. Okay, this is a really hard quiz. I'm gonna need you to tell me, is it a fancy dance or a country dance? Go. What do you think? It looks fancy. It's a country dance. It is a country dance. This is a little bit, you know, it's a little bit like you might need to know a couple things, but you could watch it and you could jump in there. Okay. Country or fancy? Fancy. So fancy. So you see so many geometric patterns happening. There's a full orchestra. Corsets are tight. Wigs are secured. This one would be very hard to just jump into. It'd be really awkward. Probably wouldn't do that. You want to see more? Keep going? Okay, you get the idea. So fancy. And all of this brings us to the cakewalk. This is a very famous dance, which is also full of irony, and I'll break down why. Okay, So let's look at these two images, and based off of everything that I've presented to you already, what do you notice in these two pictures? What is similar and what is different? Both pictures have couples dancing. Great. Both are wearing formal dress. Excellent. The separation between the two.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
One's holding fingertips and the other one appears to have her arm through and she's much closer to them.
Okay, so like proximity of people. Okay, great, is different. Any other things you notice?
Well, the instruments, one has a harp and pretty fancy instruments versus, more,
Yeah. Okay, so the top picture has, we see a harp. I'm not sure what else would be there. Maybe a piano, but maybe it's just a harp. And then below we have the banjo, and we have a fiddle, and we have maybe a small trumpet. We have things that are more accessible to these people. Great. Good. Inside versus outside. Excellent. So we have people that are practicing their dance in a ballroom, and we have people who are outside on the ground.
Why do you have one in color and one in black and white?
Oh, that's just the way it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
so white versus black.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of the elephant in the room, but everybody in the top picture is white and everybody in the bottom picture is black. So that is sort of the crux of how the cakewalk gets born. So the cakewalk in its earliest stages is a dance of resistance. The cakewalk is really a fascinating dance. In those two images, the top image is maybe sort of a dance that would be happening on a labor camp by the people at a party, a social event that's happening there. The enslaved people are maybe inside working the house that night, maybe outside observing through a window what these dances look like. And a way that they're able to resist some of what they're experiencing is to make fun of the dances of the enslavers. They get hand-me-down clothes, they dress up fancy, and right outside of the house, they do the most ridiculous, exaggerated dancing they can possibly muster to throw shade at the master. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but if I was, I would say, F you to the master. This was the beginning of the cakewalk. Okay, so that's great, right? They make this dance where they can put on these clothes and they can strut around mocking the people who are spending all day oppressing them. But that's not the actual irony of this entire situation. Then, the people in the house notice what the enslaved people are doing. And do you know what they say? They say, oh my God, that's amazing. Your dance is so cool and so awesome. I would like to invite you all into my home for the next party that we have to perform this for my guests. And whoever does it the best will get a piece of cake. Are you kidding me? I'm going to invite you into my home so you can mock me in front of my friends. Talk about dance as resistance. That's what I'm talking about. Dance is subtle, dance is subversive, dance is a ride, and dance is intellectual. These people reclaimed their power through movement. For me, that's just like, that's great. That's why we dance. Okay. So originally this is happening on the labor camps, and it for a while was called Walk the Chalk Line. And I don't know, I'm not sure, I never did a cakewalk growing up, but depending on what part of the country you were from, maybe that's all you knew that it was like a children's game where you go around in a circle and they like call out a number and then you stop on it, and if they called your number, you got cake. That it sort of evolved into that, but this is the origins of it. Yeah, so this is a very subversive dance that mocks the slave owners, and it does it right in their face, and they don't even know. Pretty great. So how do you know if you're looking at a cakewalk? It's very Africanist in its expression with the body. Your body's either going to be leaning really, really way forward or really, really, really far back. Your legs are high and they're strutting, sort of like, well, I won't do too much, but think about the Rockettes, you know. This is like this very classic, iconic knee out, leg kick motion. The rhythms are syncopated, which later, much later, is going to lead into a lot of our ragtime rhythms that we see in music. And then there's tons of room for improvisation and individuality because you really want to mock people in the way that you want to mock people. You don't want to be like told how to do that. It loses some of its essence. Okay, so obviously we don't have films of people doing this on labor camps, but it was documented pretty early on. And then you'll see in this first one, I think it's in the first film I'll show you, there's somebody holding a small American flag. This is also a way to sort of protect themselves. If somebody were to come at them and say, this is too much, you're not a patriot, I can't believe what you're doing, they could say, but I'm holding the flag. Of course I'm being patriotic and I support everything that's happening here. It was kind of like a little bit of a defense mechanism or a protective piece. Also in cakewalks, you often see top hats and canes. You're gonna be dressed up. And this is a little bit, you know, it's a little bit toned down, but you could imagine to the extreme that they would go, or that they would feel brave enough to go. Okay, so there's this merry-go-round of appropriation, right? It's enslaved people mimicking the dances they're seeing inside the house, which is then being absorbed and brought into the house, but then it becomes even messier because the white people like it so much that they start doing it. And they start performing the cakewalk also at the parties, but not just even, they don't even stop there. They start doing the contests. It becomes like a regular party event at all of these balls in all of these places. And then it accelerates even more. It gets so popular, it starts showing up on the theatrical stage. We're about to go into which I'm not going to talk about today, but the entire minstrel era of America always ends with a cakewalk. So now you have white people wearing blackface doing a cakewalk. You can see how it just kind of keeps, the merry-go-round of appropriation just keeps going and going and going. So it becomes the finale for most minstrel shows. Then it becomes a white popular dance. And it even appears on Broadway and really prevalent during the golden era of Hollywood. And all of that, to me, every time I think about it, it just sort of blows my mind. So here's one more example for you. You can also see how so many of the like social dances that start bubbling up in the American youth also have characteristics that are stemming from the cakewalk or from early African American dances. Okay, so things to think about. A stereotype, we all know what a stereotype is. It's a conventional, formulaic, and usually oversimplified conception, opinion, or belief. A person, group, event, or issue considered to typify or conform to an unvarying pattern or manner, lacking any individuality. So when the cakewalk becomes appropriated by the white people and they start performing it inside of the finales of minstrel shows, they're perpetuating an oversimplified stereotype of how they think black people move at this time. So this is sort of actually really problematic. And a caricature, a representation, especially visual, in which the subject's distinctive features are deliberately exaggerated or distorted to produce a comic or grotesque effect. So when they're wearing blackface and exaggerating the facial features of African Americans and performing this exaggerated movement, they're building within the theater world and outside of the theater world these stereotypes and caricatures of black people that are not based on anything real, but they're perpetuating it through the entertainment industry at large. So after a long period of time, Hollywood also incorporates the cakewalk, like I said, perpetuating these stereotypes, which become part of Broadway and the Hollywood brand. And I'm going to show you a film, and I just want you to sort of watch it and think about if this is being played for you all the time or in everything that you're seeing as a young person growing up, how it can sort of normalize the way that you think about people who are not like you and why that's an issue. So this is from Stormy Weather. How many of you have seen the film Stormy Weather? Oh, homework. Okay, you can watch it sometime. So this is just one scene with Lena Horne and Bill Robinson.
Ladies and gentlemen, the cakewalk.
That's the leg strut. So the hats they're wearing are extremely problematic.
Everybody join in. Come on, Sophia, let's try and win this cake. But this is our dance.
Tonight's the Army's night, chick.
Wait a minute, waiter. Come on, let's dance, honey.
But you said there was no point in dancing.
But there is now, baby.
Okay.
Why, you big blow-off, trying to show my...
And it kind of segues into a different part of the scene. But, okay, so like fighting an addiction, being an anti-racist requires persistent self-awareness, constant self-criticism, and regular self-examination. This is something that I'm always continually working on, and when I feel like I've learned something, all I know is that there's more to learn and more to do. This is a bibliography. If you want to take a picture and look up more resources for yourself later, you can do that. And do you want me to go back? Did I go too fast? Go back. Okay. And then we'll open it up for some questions, or thoughts, or reflections, or lunch. Okay. Yeah.
We had a little TV. Oh. When I was growing up, we had, probably had the first TV on the block, and we used to watch Amos and Andy, and and was it Al Jolson that was a black dancer? He was fantastic.
Well, I think Al Jolson wore blackface. I think he was white. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I think he was donning blackface.
All right. I guess after listening to you, I'm wondering, I enjoyed all those people, and I thought they were fantastic, and I was wondering, did we take advantage of them?
I think, that's a lot to sort through. But maybe as a child, you didn't know. You didn't know that that person was wearing blackface, or you didn't know that that was a choice of that artist to be, perpetuating a stereotype through the movements that they were doing. I don't know the history of Al Jolson, but if Al Jolson was told by his director, this is what you have to do, otherwise you're not going to get your paycheck, how much agency did he have in the choices that he was making? I mean, maybe a lot. Maybe as a white male at that time, he could have said, no, I want to make a different choice and I'll do this skit, but I won't wear blackface. I think you only can start where you can start and just grow from there. I think also it's really important, especially if you identify as white, to hold yourself accountable for how you move forward and what you choose to learn and what you choose to do, but maybe to just accept that was, I mean, you were how old? Maybe 5 or 6? You only know what you know at that time, and now you know what you know now. So how do you, what choices do you make to change what you can in the realms where you exist now? And if you notice something, how do you feel about it? How do you talk about it with other people? How do you make space for that conversation to exist? But yes, there were a lot of white performers who were perpetuating stereotypes about an entire group of people, but they were doing it in a time where that was extremely normalized. So what do we do now to make that not a normal, obviously, if you wear blackface today, that's not a normalized experience. People are going to call you out for that. It's going to be a big problem. But people still do it. There are still choices that happen on Broadway that are inappropriate and should not be made, that are made, and then it has to be brought forward. I think just a couple years ago, people were darkening their skin in the Aladdin production on Broadway. They were told not to do that, hire somebody who fits that role. So it's still happening, but hopefully it's happening less and less the more that we can all call it into the space as much as possible. Okay. It's not. Yeah. Yeah, the comment was, tell me your name? Sandy. Oh, we'll bring a microphone to you. Hold on. John's coming with the mic. Thank you for sharing.
I used to live in Akron area. It was a suburb, Monroe Falls, very lovely neighborhood, and we had a number of black neighbors. They were wonderful people, probably, better educated than I was, and I respected that. And yet somebody went through our neighborhood and destroyed their vehicles, painted things on their garage doors to tell them to get out and everything. And I felt so bad. I had to go over and apologize to my neighbor. And I says, I didn't think this stuff went on anymore. He says, oh no, it goes on all the time. And I just feel the need to apologize to people for that. Shouldn't happen.
Okay, yeah.
I have a number of questions, and I'll be around to all of them.
Okay, John's coming with the mic. I appreciate your questions. I hope I can address them all.
Were children allowed to do the dances?
That's an interesting question, Nova. That's my daughter. You mean like the cakewalk right in the beginning when it was first made? Is that what you're asking? Any of the dances. I would definitely assume that children were allowed to do the shout, for sure. I've seen in my research images of the elders in the community teaching the younger people how to do the buzzard lope, like outside of the main circle. So yes, when they were ready, I'm sure they could join. The cakewalk, I would think yes, but I'm not sure. I could look it up and get back to you. Would that work? Yeah.
I have a feeling that sometimes mimicking behavior is meant to be flattery, and sometimes it's meant to be mockery. And then the person who is being mimicked could go both ways as well. They could feel, cool, they're flattering me because they're copying my moves, my dance, and they're appreciating my culture. But depending on how that person was treated in their life and their background, they could accept it as mockery. So I think that without dialogue and without supporting each other in a mutual and positive direction, I can see why those things can get misinterpreted or twisted in the wrong direction. So I think that's why it's so difficult to copy someone else's culture and have it seen as mockery instead of flattery. So there has to be I think, a much greater mixing and a lot of discussion and a lot of mutual support, so that doesn't become a divisive behavior, a series of divisive behaviors.
Yeah, just making sure that whatever cultural exchange is happening within very well respected dialogue and understanding, and is mutual and is with consent. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir.
We used to have cakewalks here in Lakeside.
Okay.
The Friends of the hotel had an annual hotel social. And the cakewalk consisted of an area in the lawn in front of the hotel with chairs in a circle.
Okay.
And people would pay. The whole idea was this was raising funds for the renovation of the hotel. People would pay to join the cakewalk, and there would be music, and it would go around, and when it stopped, a number was called, pulled out of a hat, I guess, and whoever was at the chair with that number won a cake.
Aha, yes.
That was a cake. That was a walk for a cake.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think that was many generations later what this all kind of turned into. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just an observation. First of all, I really enjoyed the presentation. But I also think it's a good reminder that in a time when one group of people was controlled in every little thing, there's this area of dance and music and the arts where they were able to get out. I mean, and to feel like somebody worthwhile again. I think that is the value of the arts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at least I can speak for myself when I feel just that the world is spinning out of control and there's so much that I can't do and I can't help everyone and I can't fix anything and it's just so beyond and it's so horrible. I often find myself in the dance studio. It's where I go to connect with something bigger than myself or feel like this is a place where I can make a difference, where I can, share what I know and even though it's small, even though I'm not stopping a war or changing politics that I don't agree with, it's a place where I can be in a room with 20 of my students and we can talk about and move our bodies in community in very special and spiritual ways. And that does give me hope. It gives me hope that things will change, that things will be better, that the arts are powerful, and that's not something that they can take away from anybody very easily. So I agree with you.
I really appreciate your focus on dance as resistance. And I'm also curious if you are able to share a time that was very meaningful to you, that you used dance as resistance.
Well, I'm a very privileged person. I'm a white middle-class woman. I often enter the space as the person with the power in the room. There are few times in my life where I'm in a situation where I'm being oppressed, but I'm also a woman. And so I know what that feels like to be unsafe on a train or handled. And so there have been times where I have made dances or pieces of choreography which reflect, I'm not going to take this. Actually, if you're in Cleveland next week, I'm presenting a piece of choreography which is about this. It's called Time is a Mountain. And that's a way for me to sort of like I said at the very beginning of this, I don't often always feel so comfortable speaking in front of a lot of people, but I feel very comfortable dancing. And that's a place where I hold the most of my power is through dancing myself and making choreography. So I made this piece of choreography a year ago, which really addresses how hard it is to be a woman sometimes, and that we don't get the same, even though people say, you know, equal pay, we're not paid the same. I'm not paid the same as my male coworkers. I don't have the same opportunities. Those doors are not open for me, or there are expectations of me in the roles in my life. And so this piece was sort of a way for me to like, get in the dirt of all of that. So that's a little bit of resistance for me. I've certainly been invited to a lot of protests where dance has been, like Pina Bausch is one of my favorite choreographers, and she has this very small hand dance called the Nelken line. And so people will often like get 20 dancers together and say, hey, we're gonna go to this protest and we're gonna do the Nelken line. And so they'll just be collectively together and doing this simple dance, like alongside of all of the people who are marching. I'm always busy though. I mean, that's a lame excuse, but I have yet to do something like that. But yeah, I find that I'm able to resist through education, through how I teach, for who I invite into my classrooms, by not gatekeeping, by trying to be anti-racist in every room that I'm in. All of these things are ways that I sort of use dance as resistance. Yes.
Thank you for doing this. I think all of us people that grew up in Northwest Ohio need our eyes opened to things like this. And a little over a decade ago, we moved to the Central Valley of California to chase our grandchildren, and where we are minorities. And at the beginning, I felt a little threatened myself, but after living there for a while, my attitude changes. I actually, we're sometimes forced to listen to mariachi music, however you pronounce it. But it's important to have our eyes opened, because most of us don't know this stuff ever happened and don't understand it, and I still probably don't understand it, but I have a lot better, after experiencing living out there for a long time and programs like this. I just think it's important. There's not much we can individually do about it. We have our own little space, and that's what we work with.
Yeah, and I think that's super important to, when I feel overwhelmed, I just remind myself, make change in the realms where I exist. Make a change in the realms where I exist, and like really focus on that. Otherwise it just gets to be like.
Individually we can't change the world, but individually we can change this room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mine is a quick question. Have you written a book yet, or are you going to? I am not thinking, I am saying, have you written a book? Yeah, has she written a book?
No, I have not written a book. I'm super excited. I just got this new job at Texas Christian University 2 years ago, and I'm on a tenure track, which if you know anything about.
Get that book written.
Well, my version of a book is I'm producing a one-woman show. So I'm deep in the process of that right now, but that's to get me to associate professor. So maybe when I go from associate to full, I'll write a book.
But I mean, this is also for the world. It's not just, I'm an academic as well, but the story you have to tell and I wrote a book, and I felt the story needed to be shared. And that's all I'm saying to you is what you put up there is so logical that it would fall, I think, very easily into the pattern of a book that helps educate hundreds or thousands of people, not just people in an auditorium.
I appreciate that. I think I sometimes I put blockades on myself. How do I say this? Many books have already been written about these things. And as a white woman, I don't know that I'm the one that needs to write the book. No? Okay, so I think there's
So
different...
she should be the one to write the book?
I just feel like...
Yes. What you shared is an outline for a book. I'm sorry, but it is. So get it done. Right?
Yeah, I'll do my homework. Okay, thank you for that.
Yes, I just wondered, knowing with this presentation, where does the cakewalk stand today in terms of, you know, its knowledge, its presentation? Is it still used? I mean, is it just all historical, that sort of thing?
That's a great question. I don't know of any records of it happening anymore. I think that at its height of the minstrel era, and then as people started to learn the origin story of it, they realized, okay, this is extremely problematic. It sort of fell out of fashion in the same time that like donning blackface was falling out of fashion. And I think the only things that I know of that still happen are like cakewalks at school fundraisers. And I was very tempted. There was when my son went to Lomond in Shaker Heights, Ohio, they were doing their end of the year, you know, celebrations, and they said, please bring a cake, we're gonna do a cakewalk. And I was this close to going to the principal and saying, you really shouldn't do that. I just don't think that that's like the best thing to raise money. But then I thought, well, maybe it's so out of context at this point, and maybe I don't have time to give a lecture to second graders about, I don't know. So I didn't say anything at that time. But as far as I know, nobody is really doing. You see remnants of it like in the Rockettes, you know, in that very specific kick, but not in the other elements of it.
Early in the talk, you mentioned racism and oppression, things like that. And so the whole history of the enslaved people mocking, you know, their masters, and but then the whole cycle of how it gets included in the culture, and then almost turned around in like the movie that you showed. I guess I'm thinking about how, you know, blackface fell out of favor, but there are many popular culture movies and TV shows where stereotypes are almost doubled down on, again, for comedy purposes. And I guess sometimes it really troubles me because it seems like it's encouraging stereotypes as opposed to fighting against them. But I don't know. I wonder what your thoughts are on things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I don't know that I have so many well thought out, thoughts on that at this moment. But I feel like there are definitely certain comedians who fall into a very specific identity set. Like, who is it? Trevor Noah? Trevor Noah is a comedian who I find to be very funny. But I think part of what that is for me is that he really hits everyone. He really goes for all of the people, so he's not just focusing on one group of people and demeaning and mocking that group. So I don't know. I'm not an expert on comedy or TV shows, but I do think that like it is inappropriate if you are using comedy and you're using your status or your power to demean somebody else's existence. I don't think there's any situation in which that is right. Yeah, and we just have to be, you know, like this gentleman was saying before, like any sort of cultural exchange that's happening needs to be happening with a lot of care so that we can all be taking care of each other. And yeah, and if those artists aren't sure, then don't do it. Just make the choice, make a different choice.
Thank you very much, Annika.
Yay.
Thank you.